tomorrow on CBS.
Coming up, John Lennon, his death, his life, and his music. A team report on the fans who loved him, the man charged with killing him, and the sounds that shaped a generation.
Hanukkah greetings from Channel 2.
From Channel 2 News, the 11 o'clock update. Tuesday, December 9th, 1980. John Lennon, a legend lost. Here is Rollin Smith.
Good evening. Mark David Chapman, a 25-year-old Beatle fan, is in Bellevue Hospital's prison ward tonight, charged with what authorities say was the premeditated execution of John Lennon. A phalanx of police, fearing a Jack Ruby-style reprisal, tonight rushed Chapman to the hospital for psychiatric tests. Right now, at the scene of the killing, Lennon's West Side apartment house, hundreds of fans continue their vigil. Our Gene Downey is there for a report on the day that the music died.
Rollin, police say Chapman stalked Lennon for about 3 days before the shooting. And security people here say it wasn't unusual for Lennon to stop and sign autographs for friends. But it was one of those autograph hunters who pulled the trigger last night. 5 shots rang out shortly before 11 o'clock in the courtyard of the Dakota. John Lennon fell to the ground, moaning, "I've been shot."
They took John to the radio car we were in, and we took him to the hospital.
What condition was he in when he was in your car?
He was shot.
And he was limp. There were about 6 officers carrying him. He had a little bit of blood coming out of his mouth.
It wasn't the first time Lennon saw his accused attacker in this incredible photograph taken earlier yesterday by Paul Gorish. You can see Lennon signing an autograph for 25-year-old Mark Chapman, the man charged with firing the gun that killed the former Beatle. Police rushed Lennon to the emergency room at Roosevelt Hospital, but it was too late. As the news spread, fans start to gather here quite spontaneously, and then the doctor confirms, yes, John Lennon brought here at 11 o'clock. He was dead on arrival. Doctors say death came almost immediately.
There was a significant injury of the major vessels inside the chest, which caused a massive amount of blood loss, which probably resulted in his death.
Did he lose consciousness right away, do you think, from the...
I'm certain that he was dead at the moment that the first shots hit his body.
John's wife, Yoko, pleaded with doctors and police, begging them to tell her that it wasn't true, that he'd be all right. But efforts to revive him were futile. John and Yoko spent their last night together in a recording session. Michelle?
A question on everyone's mind tonight is, what kind of a person is Mark David Chapman? Is there anything in his background to warn that he might kill the music star he apparently idolized? Chris Borgen tried to find some answers.
Well, on arraignment, the district attorney called Mark Chapman cool, calm, calculated, who with deliberation and with premeditation assassinated John Lennon. Chapman's lawyer said no. Chapman was suicidal, he said, not able to understand or communicate anything about last night. He wanted a psychiatric evaluation.
I asked for a psychiatric evaluation because if a defendant is unable to fully appreciate what's going on in court and can't fully communicate on a rational level with his attorney, then he's not really getting a fair shake.
The judge granted the request to remand Chapman to Bellevue Hospital for a psychiatric examination. But for those who knew Chapman in Hawaii, where he had worked in the hospital printing shop, Chapman was remembered merely as a nice, quiet guy.
He did his job well, faithfully, sometimes even beyond what we asked him to do. He'd come up with even more creative suggestions than maybe what we had given to him. He just was just a good guy.
The same was true for those who knew him at Columbia High School in Decatur, Georgia. Chapman, the rock guitarist who idolized John Lennon, even to the way Lennon dressed.
He wore the army jackets and maybe got a little bit on the rough side. If not rough behavior-wise, rough looking anyway.
In trying to draw a picture of Chapman, you have only splashes of color. Arriving in Hawaii late 1976, getting married, living in this condominium complex. Last job as a security guard in the complex. On quitting the job, mysteriously signing his name first as John Lennon, then crossing it out. Before leaving Hawaii some 6 weeks ago, he applied for, and with no criminal record, was allowed to buy a gun. The same gun, police allege, which was used to kill Lennon. Mark Chapman arrived in New York City in the latter part of October, around the 25th or the 27th. He had literally stayed here at the Wall of Astoria for one night. It was his habit, he had said, to stay at the best hotel for at least one night before he moved on to a YMCA. From the West Side YMCA to a Midtown hotel last night to the Dakota and the shooting of John Lennon.
Did he come to New York to meet John Lennon?
I can't go into that at this point.
Did he come to New York to kill John Lennon?
I can't go into that at this point. I'm sorry.
So still no answers. Tonight, Mark Chapman is in isolation at Bellevue Hospital, waiting to undergo that psychiatric examination. The case adjourned until January 6th, at which time his lawyer says he will enter a plea of insanity. Roland?
As we told you earlier, the vigil continues outside tonight on the spot where John Lennon was murdered more than 24 hours ago. Hundreds of people are there representing the millions saddened by his death. Our John Tesh is now outside the Dakota with this report.
Roland, thank you. John Lennon's wife, Yoko Ono, has said that the family does not plan to have any funeral arrangements for John, the singer. She does want to have a silent vigil at another time to be announced, but as you can see here already, a vigil outside their apartment. The faces here tell the story of the grief shared by millions of people. They came here to West 72nd Street. They came in the freezing rain. Some came to sing with the recorded remembrances squeaking out of portable radios. Others came just to see where the man had lived. And still others brought with them bouquets of thanks for the music that for years had shaped their way of dressing, thinking, and listening. Walking through the crowd, one could hear the names of John Kennedy, Martin Luther King. One could observe journalists searching for a way to report something they still could not understand. And in the crowd, you could hear words like senseless and hopeless.
It's 1980. It's you never know when it's going to hit you. It's living for today. It makes you think about living for today, because tomorrow there'll be a shotgun in your face.
Many kept their vigil here since the moment they learned of John Lennon's violent death. Some shivered through the night, buoyed up by hot coffee from a friendly coffee shop. And then there were those who, in a panic, rushed to stores to try and grab a piece of the man who could no longer make the music they had loved for so long.
It's a final remembrance to him, you know. It has to, in some way, I have to pay him back for, you know, all he gave to me.
Who knows what Lennon fans saw tonight as they gazed on a gate covered with flowers on West 72nd Street. Maybe it was John himself, and maybe it was a part of their childhood that last night died in a hail of bullets. When someone like John Lennon is killed, it does something to your memory. I remember playing music as a rock musician and as a youngster, and wondering how someone could be such a musical genius. Tonight, I wonder how such a musical genius could have been gunned down. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, John. More about the death and life of John Lennon as we continue our 11 o'clock update. Friend and former Beatle Ringo Starr rushes here to comfort Lennon's widow. Dennis Cunningham looks at the music and the man who helped shape a generation. And Ronald Reagan in New York comments on John Lennon's tragic death. Stay with us.
Imagine there's no heaven.
Power that the Beatles held over their fans showed again today as drummer Ringo Starr left the Dakota. The shocked Ringo, who had spent Thanksgiving here with the Lennons, flew in this morning from the Bahamas to comfort Lennon's wife. He visited her for 2 hours. And ashen Paul McCartney said, "I can't take it in at this moment," when he first learned of John's death. Later, he remembered his partner as a great man. And as for George Harrison, he was said to be shocked and in seclusion.
The murder of John Lennon is again raising questions of crime, safety on our city streets, and gun control. Before a meeting today with Terence Cardinal Cook, President-elect Ronald Reagan was asked about the killing. He called it a great tragedy, and he was asked would stiffer handgun laws stop such tragedies.
I've never believed that. I believe in the kind of handgun legislation we have in California. So if someone commits a crime and carries a gun when he's doing it, they add 5 to 15 years to the prison sentence.
And a furious Mayor Koch today lashed out at the London press for blaming Lennon's murder on New York and the American gun laws. One paper saying freedom to carry guns has brought about monsters. Koch insisted that tighter gun laws, even the death penalty, would not have saved Lennon's life at the hands of a deranged killer.